Hi there. Today we're going to look at what are the issues in the business of publishing papers. And you may think, why is this important to me? Well, because after you finish your PhD, you will most likely become a scientist or work in fields related to science, and you may have to deal with the publishing industry. And it's important that you understand some of the basics. And this video is about giving you a flavor of what it is. This is quite a large piece of business, very articulated. And here we're going to give some hints on how to approach it. And at the end of the video, I'm going to give you some suggestion how you should approach it while you are doing your PhD. Because remember, you are here to publish papers as well as doing great work. Stay tuned. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty of this video, we're going to ask ourselves some questions, and they are going to guide us through it. The first question is asking ourselves why we want to publish in the first place. We can say we have a lot of results ready. Okay, but to get there, we have done quite a lot of work before. So we have done quite a lot of work. We got some results, and now we want to publish it. Okay. Or is it really this that drive us in publishing papers? Well, yes, in some instance. When I was doing my PhD, this was the case. We didn't have a lot of targets in terms of number of papers to publish over the course of your PhD. It was good to have one submitted somewhere, and you could get through your PhD. Nowadays, it's more stringent, more demanding, and there are a specific number of papers that you need to publish, also of a certain quality. And therefore, maybe, publishing papers comes from that. It's a requirement. You are required to publish a certain number of papers of a certain quality in order to get your PhD. That's why you are in this business. Okay, now another question which, somebody outside of the PhD business may have to say, why you worked for so many years on that specific topic, It doesn't happen so often that, in industry or, in other kind of jobs out there, people work on the same topic for so many years. Maybe it's trendy, You like it because it's trendy, and, that's where you have invested so many years in doing it. Or maybe, your supervisor has got a grant, so the money is got that has to be justified. We need to justify where we spend our money. That's another way to look at it. And another possibility which happens relatively often is that you start on something which you're excited about, then have difficulties. You try to solve them, but you feel that you can't progress very well. And then you realize that it was badly posed, the original problem. Then you readdress everything by defining a new topic on which you really dive in and get your PhD done. These are kind of scenario I come across with over the years. When it then comes to publishing things like an author of a book, if you become a writer, you always are confronted with this. It's who is my readership? Journalists do the same. For a number of years now, they ask themselves and the prospective authors this question: who is the readership? Trying to define them. Now, on this topic here, on the readership, I have a slightly different view. Okay, why? Well, let's look at this in this way. Instead of saying who is the readership, why we don't ask ourselves who should be the readership? The answer to this question will become much clearer later on in the video. But now what we can say is that, maybe the readership is the scientific community. So everyone working in science. It sounds undefined. How many people are there? Well, look at your family. Family from dad, from mom. How many scientists are there? Not that many. In my whole family, from my dad and my mom's side, there are, hundreds of people that I mapped, okay, on the family tree. I had only one with a PhD. So this means that, the scientific community is a very small proportion of the overall population of the on the earth. So in terms of humanity, the scientific community is nothing. Now what about this other? Most of the work we do, it doesn't actually go to the scientific community because it may be small as a percentage, but it's quite varied. There are people concerned with engineering, there are people concerned with physics and so forth. So therefore, if you look at the people in the scientific community that are interested in your work, that's really, really tiny. And is this what the journals care about? The scientific community? The scientific community of that particular journal? There's something wrong there, in my humble opinion. So who should be the readership? Well, the readership should be humanity overall, because as we see in a minute, it is humanity who pays for your work. In these other sessions, we're going to look at a little bit more into the model for the business of publishing. So what we have is that we have, a publisher, and typically he has many journals in different, scientific areas. And then, there is a board of directors, okay, of editors into the journals, and they kind of manage, okay, the journal. So they define what kind of area the journal should be focusing on, and the kind of procedure for submitting, reviewing and accepting papers and so on and so forth. How many of these papers will be published per month or per year, and then there are people, that produce the paper, and they are, people like you. You are, in a university or in a research center, and you are paid with public money through the university or the research center. And so your overall project, it's much more than just your salary. They have to pay for equipment, for your travel, consumable, and PC. Then there are things like overheads. Overheads are fixed cost of the research center of the university, which gets kind of spread across all projects which are publicly or privately funded. These overheads can be quite high sometimes, 15%, sometimes 20% or more, depending on the kind of project. I have come across some projects which were publicly funded with overheads of 60%, it's a massive amount. So therefore, the money comes from taxes, basically. So the public pays for it. The public, it's also you, your family, you, if you pay tax, you pay for it. So gets into there, and the university takes a cut over heads. Okay, takes a cut of it, and then the rest is spent. And as we said before, sometimes it's spent even when it's not needed, because otherwise the money goes back, So better to spend for it. Then, you publish with your research work, you publish paper because you have good results, which you want to show. So up until now, everything that you have done, your work, buying things, it's, I believe, wisely spent, if you haven't done something horrible wrong with the money. But, it's wisely spent. But from there on, from the moment you have your manuscript ready onwards, things get a bit murky. Why? Well, what happens is that you go to a journal, which is published, part of a publisher. You've done the academic work, then the journal, if your paper subject is aligned with theirs, will send your work to reviewers. Reviewers work for free. They will review your paper, they will read your paper critically, reading it and answering to what you've done, probably, also suggesting things to improve. And they do all of this for free. And then if your paper gets accepted for publication, the reviewer will say, paper accepted, and gets into the editorial board. And then at that point, it gets into the publisher, which, will format your paper according to the journal guidelines, will format it to make it similar to others' papers, and then they will publish it. But you need to transfer your copyright to the publisher, to the journal publisher, which means the journal can make money out of it. So now all your work doesn't pay you anything anymore, just your salary. If you had made the book outside of a PhD, or if you have made a patent, then you will have the right to exploit that. In this case, you don't have the right to exploit. Actually, to stay careful too, because sometimes by giving the copyright away, you may not be able to defend someone which infringes on your copyright, because now the copyright is with the publisher, not with you anymore. Okay, so the publisher makes money, and who the publisher sells this paper to? To the general public? No, they have a well-defined, predefined readership. They will sell to that readership. They will not bother to go to try to sell to the general public. They have a predefined readership. And who is this predefined readership? Do you think they have to go and sell it scientist by scientist, scientist by scientist? No, they sell it to your university, to the same university you have worked for. And it's the same university that took money and overheads from the government. So basically, we are paying it twice. We are paying it through public money directly for doing the work, and then we're paying again for reading our own work. That's madness. This is the madness of the business of publishing papers today. There is more. When I try to understand a stick problem, then one of the things which I do is going back in the past, okay? Sometime very far. And this is what we're going to do today. We're going to go back in the past take the example of the Royal Society, in London. Royal Society, at one point made a remarkable decision. They took a step which was basically the step to employ the first scientist in human history. That's what they did. They had one person which they paid with a salary, to be their scientist. This person task was to go around, and find out every week a different topic that he or people working with him, should understand, and then he should present it to the Royal Society once a week. This person is nothing less than Robert Hooke. Robert Hooke, the guy of the spring, the K of the spring, the spring constant. It's Robert Hooke, Hooke's law, which is the kind of spring that you have in a material, in compression or in tension. It's similar to a spring. When you take a piece of material, you compress it, or you try to pull it, then for a certain deformation it behaves like a spring. That's Hooke's law. So Robert Hooke was the first paid scientist in human history, and the Royal Society paid for it. So what he did was, he couldn't manage all of it, probably. So what he did is to also bring along with him some other young talents, and demonstrate principles in front of this jury in the Royal Society. And one of these young talents which he brought was nothing less than Isaac Newton. Robert Hooke brought Isaac Newton to the Royal Society, and later on the two fall apart. This kind of friendship fall apart, and we know of both how important they've been, but for sure nobody can deny the remarkable contribution that Isaac Newton did to humankind. That's how important is science overall. But the science as it is disseminated today, that's a bit far from what it was back then. So the Royal Society back then had a problem. They could pay someone like Robert Hooke to do all of this work. Then they could try to disseminate it, but back then they had a massive issue. Analphabetism was rife. People, it's not that they couldn't afford to buy anything, but they couldn't read. So it was relatively useless, this attempt of dissemination, of scientific work to humankind, because they were not the condition for people to assimilate what others were willing to disseminate. Things are a bit different today, and we're going to ask ourselves now, what did it change? What is that changed since then? Well, for sure, many more people are able to read, write, make calculations and things, so they can read, basic thing. However, in scientific publication, in most scientific publications, there are notations, and there are also ways of portraying the results, which are very difficult to understand from the public, general public. So this is still an issue of dissemination. Scientists are still paid for their work, like the first scientist, Robert Hooke, was paid. Now we have, big research center, university, and they cost quite a lot of money to run the site, the electricity, water, heating, cooling, all of this, paying for the taxes and other things. It can be quite, substantial sum of money each year. So they have to be paid for with overheads. But what I personally have a massive problem with is that if you go back to the time of Robert Hooke and the Royal Society, we had a direct link. So the Royal Society was, funding the work of Robert Hooke, and then this work will be accessible to anyone that could, make any use of it. So I think, today, business of publishing papers, it's more of a Ponzi scheme. This is very strong word, but it looks like a Ponzi scheme. So we have, the public institution that, manage public money, which are our taxes, and they give this money to people from research institutions, from university that bid for it. And these people are scientists which do work, they, prepare proposals for winning this pot of money. And by the way, this kind of pot of money are only available in certain research area. And who defines that? Are the journals, through their editors. They, promote certain research area. And therefore you are going to find money available only in those research area. And therefore you're going to have a very hard time to get that money. Because, there are thousands of people bidding for that money, maybe, if you go at, let's say, at a European level, I've been bidding for some European money and something else. There were thousands of proposals, really, in each big call. If you are probably at country level, there are still, maybe close to hundreds, is still quite a lot. So the chances of winning a research proposal is relatively slim. Therefore, you need to spend a lot of time in searching for money around, because you're a cost to the university or to the research center. But the Ponzi scheme is not here. The Ponzi scheme, as I said before, is that what happens when you have to publish your work, because unless you publish your work, you are not going to get any other research grant. Getting research grant is about your reputation, which you need to continue to build, your links with other people. And these are built only out of the work you do and the work you publish. People know you about what you have published. Therefore, the Ponzi scheme is when the publisher gets in. When the publisher gets in, they already define the themes of the topics you need to work on. They influence it quite a lot. And then, they deal with the university. And the university, it's, kind of public, semi-public, body. It's not a company. And therefore, they get ripped from the publisher. Because I have to pay for my own paper. To see my own paper, I have to pay for it. Okay? And this is the same if I am in a university, if I am physically in a university, I want to see my paper, I have paid access to that particular publisher and I can see it. Otherwise, I cannot see it. Yeah? So this is, it's a Ponzi scheme. So the publisher is getting quite a lot of money. Look at the publisher out there. Go to look at their annual report. They make billions. Out of what? Out of what? Well, out of what? What are the editors? The editors are in the offices of the publisher? No, the editors are professors which sit again in the university. So the time they spend for the publisher, it's not paid by the publisher, it's paid by the university with their electricity, their gas and everything. It's a Ponzi scheme. They're getting all of this juice out, the publisher, doing virtually no work. Look at also how many people are employed by the publisher. And then make the paragon, the kind of comparison with how many people work in a company with the same turnover per year. Let's say producing nuts and bolts, producing bands, elastic bands or whatever. Look at it. You see, there's no comparison. This is why they make zillions. Yeah? So it's a Ponzi scheme. That's why it is like it is. Okay? And now, as I promised at the beginning of the video, here are some suggestions. All we have said so far, it's to take you through the whole idea of the business of publishing scientific papers. But it's not for trying to put you off. Okay? So, first of all, whenever there is such a mess, there is a huge opportunity to make it right. Okay? Maybe, when you will finish your PhD, then, you will get a job, you will probably have understood this a little bit more, and you want to do something. I'm doing something for it. Okay? So, you can do something for it to change it for the better, because you can't change for the better without anyone to lose anything. It's just to make it much more viable, sustainable, and fair for everyone. Okay, it's possible. But now here are some suggestions. Some of the suggestion comes from people I've been known for 20 plus years, and one of the suggestions is about going to publish your work to a society. There are several societies out there. Now, it's not probably wise to speak of any, but on both sides of the Atlantic, there are a number of societies, not publisher or publishing house, but they are really societies. Okay, so they have a different way to operate, and not only this, usually also the people that work for them have a different kind of way to see the world. Okay, and I've seen it when I tried to publish some papers in recent years. The response I had from traditional publisher and from our society was really, really different. The one in the society, they have written a report about my paper. There is one delinquent, larger publisher out there. I have sent number of papers for publishing. In a few cases, I not only got rejected with 1 or 3 lines comments, not the reviewer was not saying anything specific, was saying, I don't believe this, or you haven't done this, but without substantiating it. But in a few cases there was also personal attack. I haven't seen this into societies. So after that kind of experience I had, I decided that whenever I can, I will target a society. Then if I can't get through it, or there is no society which has a journal specifically designed for taking my paper on, I will have to go somewhere else. Okay? But in the first instance, I look at societies. Okay. Then second thing is, when you read papers of people that work in disseminate media, look at where they published. Sometimes, they publish in a specific journal where still today your paper can be taken on. So keep an eye on where the people you read work from as reference have published their work. Okay? And sometimes some of these people are really, luminaries in their fields. So where they publish their work is also an extremely important venue you should target for. Obviously, check that this venue hasn't changed the theme of the thing. So, journal change over the years. Maybe, they were working on fluid mechanics, now they're working in gas dynamics. Just check, okay, how things have evolved. Obviously, take advice from your supervisor. Many times your supervisor, it's the first point of call. But explore yourself. The more you explore, okay, the more independent you become, and the more ready you will be when you will go out there. Then and do all of this on your own. You will have then probably a research, a small center of research somewhere. You will have PhD postdocs yourself that you have to advise. So trying to be as much independent as possible, exploring things, and don't be afraid of making some mistakes along the way. As far as the mistakes are genuine, there is nothing to be afraid of. Okay? And that's all for now. Thank you.